Welcome to the Blender 3 tutorial for complete beginners. If you never used Blender before, this tutorial is perfect for you. We are going to go over the basics, basic navigation setup, create some low poly characters. You don't need to have any drawing skills to make 3D models. I will show you in the many options of Blender. So let's start with the basics first. Ready, set, go. Do some basic setup first. Go to blender.org, click download Blender and download Blender. It is free from Mac, Linux and Windows. It is completely free and open source and will always be, which makes it more awesome. Then inside Blender, when you install this, you see this window. To create a new project, go to here, New File, General, or here, File, New, General. This is the first window that you will see, and there's a lot going on. Now, you won't learn everything at first, so don't be intimidated. These one here are the different modes which we can work in. You can also sculpt. You can model here, you can work on shading, animation, which are completely different skill sets. So this tutorial I will focus more on the modeling part, but I will also touch some of these other ones here. Here there's our basic saving files and rendering. These are some basic gizmos. Here you can create new windows, then insert different views, or you can also pull this one down, pull new screens up. And standard is set to the timeline when you want to do some animation, for example. Let's put this down for now. And here are some scene collections. So for example, now we have our camera. So the thing we will see when we render our item, the light. So when we here in our view, there will be a light source from this. This will be our material view. So when we create material and shading, this is how our player or our scene will look when we render it. And this will be our object mode from our viewport shading, so how we see things right now. Now in this example I will be deleting the light and then select and delete the camera. You can also add them back or start from the project. We will really focus on modeling first. And these are some settings and modifiers that we can use as well. First, some basic navigation. Scrolling in and out will make our life easier for making items bigger or smaller. Then holding that middle mouse button, I can pan and look around. Now when I hold Shift key and then I move around with my middle mouse button, when I hold middle mouse button and Shift key, then I can move around. So this is how you can easily just move around. What I will also enable for you right here is screencast keys. So now you can see I'm zooming in, Shift, middle mouse button, pans around, and so I can navigate. Let's say I really lost my view right here. I can select my scene collection and hit the period key on my numpad or full stop. And then it snaps right back to where I was before. Okay, let's see the different views that we can have. This one is our object mode, which we can look at our object or add the different objects to this. We can also go to edit mode. And this is where we can tweak our cube, for example. Now, there are different shortkeys that you must know. First of all, in object mode, you can use tab to go back to edit mode. There will be a lot of shortkeys today, but it will make your life easier as you go. Those will be difficult at first, but very handy later on. So learn them at first. Right now, when I have something selected, it will always be an edge that's selected. So keyboard 1, 2 and 3 will switch between these vertices, edges or faces right here. Right now I can select vertices. 2 on my keyboard I can select the entire edge, and 3 on my keyboard or this icon right here I can select a face. So for example, when I select the face and then I hit G on my keyboard, I can grab this, and when I hit the right mouse button I will undo a certain action, but now when I hit G and then I hold my left mouse button, click, it will be just like this. And this is how I simply edited the basic default cube. Ctrl Z to undo that one, and we can just work around before. You can also do this with different vertices. Just pull them around and create, for example, a rock or something crazy like this. Now, if you really messed up before and you want to go back, no problem. You can save or don't save this anymore. And then select this first, and you can go to edit mode again or tab in and out, Control tab, by the way, just really goes faster between different modes, or you can memorize a number that's between them. Usually you're in between edit mode and object mode, just tab will do. So G to grab, but you can also hit a vertex, a face right here. And when I hit S, I can scale this one. So let's scale this side and scale this one. And you can also scale edges and have a little play around with that one. Another one that we can use when we have a face or an edge or a vertex selected is R to rotate this around. So these are pretty common ones. G to grab, S to scale, R to rotate. Another pretty neat one, when you have everything selected, so hit A in edit mode. Now all my faces are selected, and I hit Ctrl B, then I will bevel. So you can really bevel some edges right here. For example, this will have a pretty cool effect. And another one that you will learn pretty much is to extrude. So have a face selected, hit E on my keyboard, and you can see this extrudes this out. E again, and also click another side, E to extrude, E to extrude, E to extrude, R to rotate, S to scale, E to extrude, S to scale, R to rotate. You can create some pretty weird and nifty shapes like this one. For example, the entrance of a cave just like this, but make it pretty more neatly. So these are the basic keys in editing mode that you will be using most of the time. And you can look at it from different views. So let's say we're back in object mode. Hitting 1 on your numpad will give the front view. 3 on my numpad will give the side view. You can also hold Ctrl to look at it from the other side of the side view, or 1 in front view, but Ctrl 1 to look at it from the back. You can also hit 7 on my numpad, look at it from the top, or Ctrl 7 to look at it from the bottom. Mostly you're in between 1 in front view, 3 in side view, and with middle mouse button you can just pan and look around. Now 2 more things that I want to show you. Now having this selected, back into edit mode, you also have proportional editing. So let's say you want to sculpt this a bit more out. First of all, I go back into vertices mode when I hit O on my keyboard, or this button right here, and then select something, G to grab, you see a little circle behind it. When I'll scroll in and out, the circle will also influence the other vertices. So you see I'm not only dragging around this point, but also the other ones will have some influence. Or O again to disable this one. This is proportional editing. Another one, when I hit Alt Z, I hit X-ray modus. So for example, want to front view. Let's say I want to select everything from here. But now hit this one and I look at it from the back. This vertex is not selected. Now Alt Z or hit this icon, I can select through the mesh. So right now I have all these vertices selected and I hit S to scale, I can scale them in. By the way, you can also extrude, scale, rotate around a certain axis. So for example, let's go back into face mode. Now hit E to extrude and hit Z. It goes in the Z axis, which is up. Or I can also E to extrude, but then X on the X axis, Y on the Y axis. And you can also see these axes right here. So axis was the red line right here, the Y axis, and the Z is from top to bottom like this. So this also works with extruding, scaling, turning around, grabbing, and everything that you would need. It is very important for you to get a good grasp on these basic commands in Blender like I showed you before. And to practice this one, we are going to create some funny looking character. So I am back in object mode. I created a new project right here. And the cube here, let's create a body for this. So G, Z, and let's make our body a bit longer, go to edit mode, select the vertices, but I want to select through the vertices, so X-ray mode or Alt C. Select these ones, GZ to grab these in the Z axis, and you can see it did it everywhere. 1 on your numpad snaps back to the front view, so you don't make mistakes. Back in object mode. By the way, you can disable X-ray mode in object mode. Shift A to add a mesh, and let's add a new cube. So S to scale the cube, G to grab it, and look around if it's pretty good organized or not. Okay. Then tap edit mode. What you can also do with 3 on my keyboard, I can also then 1 back, E to extrude this. And now back in object mode, I can shift D to duplicate this one. And then for example, X on the X-axis. Shift D to give this one more of an arm. R to rotate. G to grab. Shift D. X. And then R to rotate again for this side. And we can also add a little shoulder blades, for example, right here. Shift A, mesh, and let's take an icosphere for this one. By the way, when you add items, you can also increase or decrease the subdivisions, set the radius. But I will leave this as default. So, S to scale down a bit, G to grab, and grab the other ones into place. Shift D on the X-axis. Grab this one right here. Look at it from different views. Okay, this looks good. Now another thing, let's create feet for here. I have this one selected. Back in edition mode. Now let's say I want to add a loop cut right here, so I can extrude here. Because when I now extrude, this will get a big lumpy feet. So you can add an extra loop cut. For example, this here, what we did before, is a loop cut. Ctrl R makes a loop cut. I can scroll my scroll wheel to make more, but I don't need one. Then left mouse button just snaps it where it is. And right mouse button, that's the side where it's going to go. So back into face select this one, E to extrude. And let's also do this on the other side. Back into object mode, select the other leg. Edit mode again. Ctrl R to add a loop cut. Also here, E to extrude, look at it from the side view to make sure it is the same size. Okay, good. Back into object mode. 1 on my numpad key. Then, by the way, when I hold shift and right mouse click, you can see this cursor moving around. So this is where my items spawn. So let's here, put it right there. Shift A, mesh, and then monkey. I like this feature in Blender because it comes with default monkeys. Anything with monkeys is great. G to move around, R to rotate if you need to. But I will G, Z to move it on the Z axis. Okay, right now we have some pretty nifty character. Remember, this is just to practice the basics, not going for any awards right here. And something that I also want to show you, these are all different cubes and monkeys. You can also, with shift click, select each and every part, or just A to select everything, and then Ctrl J to make this into a single object. What I can also do is set this monkey on fire. So hit F3 on your numpad keyboard, not on your numpad, just F3 on your keyboard. You can type here anything you would like to find in Blender. So for example, I can set it to smoke. So quick smoke, for example. And now hit the play button. He will be smoking. Or right here, I can change this a bit. So select the mesh you want to apply this to. And let's set from smoke to fire and smoke. And back on play button. And this is just to show him some basic things in Blender, and you can get a monkey on fire. Isn't that amazing? Now we will learn to model with the reference image. Now, I don't know about you, but I am not great at drawing, so a reference image will help. And in this example, we will create a shield. So in Google, you can find any shield that you would like. You can start very basic or anyone you would like. I just picked this shield, but you can just pick anyone you like, save it to your computer, and then come back to Blender. Now, in front view, so 1 on your numpad, Shift A, go to Image, then Reference, and then find your image and load reference image. And now you can see this image in Blender. Now we can reference based on this image. You can also hide or unhide if you want to see this or not. I select this image and you see this green y-axis right here. So I do GY and I can move this back. Or else I have to rotate this a bit, but Ctrl Z to undo. This is perfect for me, so in front view, this will align nicely. Another one I will learn for you now is the mirror modifier, because the right side and the left side will be equal, so I don't have to do double the work. Select the cube, because we will transform our cube into this shield right here. Go to edit mode. And 3 on my side view. Let's also in X-ray modes. Make it a bit smaller. So GY. This will be the thickness of our shield. So right now it's like this. Okay, perfect. 1 numpad. Ctrl R. Let's make a loop cut in the middle. Left click, right click. Select this one, hit X, and then delete these vertices. So now we only have half of this cube. Back into front view. Then go here to the modifier properties, add a modifier and choose mirror. So anything that I do on my right side will be mirrored to the left side. Now another thing, you see these are separated. When I hit clipping, these won't be separated anymore, which is what I want because my shield will be connected through the middle as well. Okay, now select the bottom half, G and then Z. And then I can GX, align these on the X-axis, as also happens on the other side. Same here, GX. And now let's finish our model. We can extrude and then align properly. So grab the vertices right here. By the way, I also do this in X-ray mode, so what happens on the front happens on the back also. Back to numpad 1, front view, E to extrude, then hit Z to apply it on the Z-axis, align with this part of the shield, then I zoom in a bit, E to extrude, a bit up, and this side one, GX, and align it with this part of the shield. Once again, select these vertices, E to extrude, GX, E to extrude, GX, and then again E to extrude, GX, and align it right there. And right now you can see the shield coming more and more alive. Okay, good. Let's do the bottom part as well for this. Grab this one, E to extrude, grab, and then X to put it on the X-axis. Select both of these vertices again, which means all 4. Then E to extrude, G, X, E to extrude, GX, E to extrude, GX. Okay, and right now you can see we have the shape of our shield completed. This is why reference models are pretty neat. So we can model anything without having great drawing skills. Okay, back into object mode, I can disable this X-ray mode is right here. I can click my reference image and I can hide it. Shortkey, H to hide, Alt H to unhide again, or just this eye icon right here. And you can see our shield right here. Okay, that's pretty nice. Now what we can do, when we are completely finished, is apply this modifier. So with our mesh selected, right here, you can apply. You can do this later, but you can do this now if you're 100% clear on this. So this mirror modifier is now applied. Okay, let's give this one some colors. And I can go back into this edit mode. And then I can select the faces that I want to color in. Let's say with shift click, I want these ones in a separate color. Go here into the material properties. And there's already a material selected right here. By the way, go here into viewport shading. Not here into this viewport shading, but this one for the materials. And right now I can click assign to these vertices. And then I can give it a color. Let's say green. Okay, perfect. Now let's select the other vertices right here. Let's select these ones with shift click. Click on a plus icon to add a new material. Click new. Let's assign this one. Let's make this blue. Not going for any awards here once again. And then also select the bottom ones, maybe right here. Click plus to add a new material. New material. And let's give this something more like reddish. You can make this more dark or more bright. This should do a sign. And this is an example of how you can color in your mesh. You can do the backside as well, but it's just the very basics of coloring in these objects. Another way is to go to texture painting. That way we can paint on top of our mesh and choose the colors of our own and where they go. So, little basic setup first, go back to object mode, and let's delete these materials, because we are going to create our own material that we can paint on. Back into edit mode, and then go to UV editing. In this mode, we are going to create a 2D flat image that wraps around our mesh, our 3D mesh right here. Like a wrapping for a gift, for example. Now hit A in the screen to select all, then U, and then Smart UV Project, and hit OK. Now we get our flat 2D view of this 3D mesh. Then you go to Texture Paint, and right here you have no textures. Hit the plus icon, choose a base color. We don't need the alpha one, because that's more about transparency. Let's give this a fitting name. Okay, very great name. And the color, we can change the color right here. Let's choose something more grayish or something like this. Hit OK. And now we can see our material right here. But now, when I go to the color picker, I can choose a color. By the way, with F, you can increase or decrease the size of our brush. And now you can paint on top of our shield. Maybe pick another color. And now we are texture painting. Once you are done with texture painting, go here to the image and then save all images. So for example, when you import this to a game engine, you have this texture with your model, and then you can have that again. Okay, back here to layout. And now you can see, when you're not here, but here, in the viewport shading for this material view, we have painted on top of our mesh, and so our texture painting was successful. Now here in the shading tab, it is automatically done for us. The base color here is this image that we saved to our computer. And there are some other settings here. I'm not going to go very deeply in depth of this, but you can make it also made out of metal, or make it more rough or more shiny, so less rough. So you can have a play with that as well. But these are just the basics of texture painting on top of a model. Now we will create a little basic model of a fish, and that way I can give it a rig, show you weight painting, and have him animated. So these are the very basics of animation done very simply. So let's start off with deleting everything here. Hit 1 on my numpad, so I'm in front view. Shift A, mesh, and let's add an icosphere. This will be the body of our fish, for example. Let's give him eyes. Shift D. Scale it down a bit. And then move it into position. Hit Ctrl 3 to move in this view. Then let's move it in the y-axis, GY. Okay, that's good. Shift, oh, that's an error, Shift D, and then Y again, and align it there. Okay, so we have little eyes and a body of our fish, very low poly. And let's add a tail for this one. Shift right click to move this here. Then Shift A, mesh, and let's add a plane. Now let's rotate it. So rotate it on the red x-axis, R to rotate, X, and then you can see it rotating, and then type in 90 and hit enter on your keyboard. Scale it down a bit, and now let's go to edit mode, Ctrl R, let's give it some loop cuts, left click, right click, Ctrl R, again here for the sides, scroll up to make multiple, then left click and then right click again. And let's make a tail out of this one. So let's select the edge here. First of all, let's go into wireframe mode. Or before we do that, let's move it up a bit. So with L, you can select all linked vertices. Then 3 to go to our side view. GY to move it up a bit. And now extrude, so EY to extrude it in the y-axis. So you have a bit of thickness going on. Okay. Now back into 1 on our numpad in our front view. wireframe, so we can select the both vertices right here. Then here into proportional editing, into G, let's create a tail out of this one. Okay, something like this. You can scroll in and out a bit. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but let's just make it a bit nicer. Okay, this is just a basic fin. And I'll go back into object mode, remove this Alt-C for the X-ray modus. Now, we have a basic fin, tail, and body and eyes going on. Okay, let's color it in a bit. First of all, let's shift select our parts here, Ctrl J to join them. So we have one fish now. And then go here to the material properties, add a new material. And the first material right here, let's give it a base color. Let's give it more of an orange-red fish. Okay, that should do. Here, make sure you have your material selected right there. Then into edit mode, let's select the eyes here and then L to select the linked vertices. And let's add a new material for these eyes and let's give them a black color. So all the way black and hit assign. Let's do this one here also. Select vertices, hit L for the linked ones. And then this is already black, so hit assign. Okay, back into object mode, we can see we have a little fish going on right here. Okay, this is some basic low poly modeling, but now let's give him a rig so we can later on animate him. How do we do that? Here in front view, then shift click here, and then we're going to go shift A, but instead of a mesh, we are going to add an armature. That's the name, so we can add bones. Add a single bone. And now we need to see these bones in front of our fish. So go to this little guy right here for the object data properties. Go to viewport display and make sure it is in front. Now the bone here is octahedral, but you can make it of a stick as well. But I like this bone because it looks more like a bone. Then go into edit mode and we can edit this bone like we edited our model. So G to grab and then we grab it. Let's make a bone for our body right here. Look at it from different sides, because right now I can see this is not really inside of my fish. I want it into the middle. So 3 on my numpad, GY to move it up like this. Look at it with 7 from the top. Okay, this bone is perfectly inside of my fish. Then 1 on my numpad again, hit E to extrude from this point right here. And then X for the x-axis. And then all the way here for the tail here. Look at it once again from different sides. Okay, that looks perfect. Go back to object mode. Right now we will connect our mesh to our bone. To do that, we first click on the mesh, then shift click on the bone, so we can parent them. If you have a yellow outline, this is correct, because this is the last thing selected we want to parent to our bone here. Then hit Ctrl P, and let's use armature deform, but with automatic weights. Click that one, and now you can see these ones are linked together. So when I now hit my bones, only my bones, and I go to pose mode, let's look at it from the top. I now hit R to rotate. You can see this is rotating and moving just like I wanted to. Okay, great. So with that done, you can animate it, but a little error may occur because now you can see our mesh deforms a little bit. So there are some pretty neat tricks you can do. First of all, this is a low poly model, which means, first of all, let's deselect and then go back to edit mode. You can see there are not many faces right here. So for weight painting, which decides how much of the mesh will be applied by a single bone, it's harder in low poly. So what we can do is go here to the wrench, add a modifier, and then subdivision surface. And you can see this subdivides our fish even more. And here even more and more. So here in edit mode you can really see the difference. You can see this fish going more and more smooth. But this also means our computer has to work harder to render this fish later on. Just for this example, I will set this right here. And then I will apply this modifier. So when I select this now, and then go back into edit mode, you can see I have more geometry to work with. Okay, back in edit mode. Let's select the bones first, then shift select my mesh here. And now there is a new mode called weight painting. And when I now control click on one of these bones, you can see the influence that the bone has on a certain part of my mesh right here. Now the radius right here is self-explanatory. A small radius is a small radius I can work with, and a big radius just covers about everything. The strength I leave as 1, and the weight, when it is all to 1, and I paint in, you can see this has influence by this bone. But I don't want my tail to be influenced by this bone. So when I set it to 0, and I can then paint in my bone right here, then control click right here. Okay, this is perfect. And you can check again. Now, make sure you don't have these parts you don't want anymore. Once again, this adds, and 0, this removes parts of this fish. And if it's too low poly, you have to turn a bit or increase the amount of geometry that you have. So this is all red, and this is all blue with parts that you don't want. You can also increase this. So red is all influence, and blue is no influence at all. Okay. Back into object mode. What I now can do is model. So, I can pose. So have my bone selected, then go to pose mode. And then I can drag here my timeline so I can create some animations. This fish will be animated from top view, so 7 on my numpad once again. And then here, let's set it to frame 1. And let's select with A all the bones. And here, when I hover here my mouse, when I hover here, I can press the I key on my keyboard and then set it to location, rotation, scale. They also call this lock rod. And then again, let's end this animation at 100 frames. Move my mouse here with I do this again. So right now my start and end points are the same animation. Let's go to 20 frames. And let's hit R to rotate, just like this. Then I hit I and set this like this. Let's go to 50, hit rotate, let's go to the other side. Hit I again, I here, and also freeze frame. And let's drag this a bit closer, because we don't need 100 frames, I see. And now let's see what happens when I hit the play button all the way from here. And you can see our fish is coming alive. Now, this is all with rotation. You can also do this with movement. So have everything selected with A, top view. I can also move this around with G. So for example, at frame 50, I want my fish to be something more like here. So with G, and then I can also only do the location. And then again, maybe at frame 64, for example, I can move the fish here. It's I, and then location. And at frame 100, it will be back there. So let's see what our fish is doing now. Let's play. It is moving, and it's going back. Now, of course, you can perfect this as you want. So with our bones selected, you can see these little key marks right here. With I, you can insert these keyframes, and the keyframes are right here. You can move these around, you can edit these, but let's say you want to delete these, select them, hit delete key, and in this view, with A, everything selected, Alt R will set it to rotation, Alt G, and then Alt A will reset all the other things and just remove the selection. Back into object mode, you just have your fish here and you can move this down. So these are the very, very basics of modeling, rigging and animating a basic low poly fish. For this part of the tutorial, I will show you how to create a low poly chair and apply a wooden texture to it. So you can apply textures from online or from your own photos onto a mesh. So first of all, let's grab this default cube, S to scale down, Z on Z axis, go into edit mode, and let's create some loop cuts. Ctrl R. Let's create 4 loop cuts right here. Left click or right click. Ctrl R, let's do this for here as well. Ctrl R, create more loop cuts, left click, right click. Then with the corners selected, shift click, E to extrude, and S to scale. Okay, we have some bit of shear action going on right here. Then click this one, Ctrl click this one, E to extrude, and S to scale this one in. Okay, we got a little bit of a chair going on right here. Good. So let's apply a texture to this. How do we do that? First of all, click the mesh right here. Let's select the materials and go into UV editing. With A, everything selected, click U and then Smart UV Project. Let's increase the island margin. So let's go to here, then hit OK. This island margin, make sure there is some separation in between, because right now what I can do is apply material. So go to Material Properties, and instead of a base color, I will click this icon right here and select an image texture. So I can open the texture. So I already went ahead in Google and find a wood texture. Pick any wood texture that you like. I picked this one, for example, and save to your computer. And then you here can open this one up to where you saved it. Open the image, and now there is some wooden texture. So right now, let's click this once again. You can see the wood is applied to my chair. Okay, with my scroll wheel I can just move around right here. So for example, back into edit mode. Let's say I don't like how this is moved here, so I can select these ones. And you can see these ones are also selected here on my UV. So what I can do now is use the same keys as modeling. So G to grab and place it somewhere else, S to scale, or R to rotate. So I can really zoom this out a bit. And this may be more like your liking. So we go back to layout. You can see this is more accurate, and you can do this for the rest of this chair as well. It's a good homework exercise to do. And this is how you can apply any texture to your model. Let me now show you a very neat feature that is new into Blender 3. Let's drag this up. And let's find right here the asset browser. This is pretty cool. Let's say I want more chairs like this. First of all, it's named cube, but you can just rename it anything. So click this one, F2, and let's name this chair, for example. And what you can do now is right click and then mark as asset. And now this is an asset from our asset browser, and I can drag in as many chairs as I want. I can create an entire classroom with this, or stack chairs on top of chairs. And I can do as crazy or as cool as I want to. So this is what you can do. For example, you can do this with multiple meshes. Shift A, mesh. Let's get more monkeys into here. And this monkey is called Susan, which I like. So right click and then mark as asset. And you can drag Susan here on top of chairs and where you want it to go. More Susans, for example. Or if you don't want it anymore, you can just right click and then clear assets, and it's removed from here. Or just mark asset and just put it back in the asset browser and create collections of your own. So far we went over basic modeling in the layout and modeling tab. We went over UV editing to make our wooden chair, for example, texture painting, shading for the colors, and animation. What there's also can do is go into sculpting. Now this is an entire different skill set on its own, but I want to show you the possibilities a little bit. Now let's start here. Shift A, mesh, let's create another monkey, and right click, let's shade smooth. So I have something to work with right here. Now with your monkey, you can go to sculpting, same controls, but this is a bit different. You can see different type of brushes here. You can just drag them out a bit to reorganize or read what I do. So for example, with our monkey, you can inflate or blob them a bit. Let's inflate the eyes a bit. So you can just click, increase the strength a bit, so you can really see the effects taking place right here. You can smoothen it out, increase the radius. Now let's smoothen, for example, this nose out. See, nose is gone. Maybe the eyelids here a bit. and then the top, for example. You can also flatten it. You can also grab certain parts. So for example, you can grab his ears. So you can make the ears a bit longer. Have some fun with that one. See? And make him really into some funny looking character. And then also the snake hook. You can just drag off of this. And now I'm going a bit very crazy here, but just to show you what sculpting can do. So these are the different modes, and I want to show this as well. Once again, this is an entire different skill set. Look up some tutorials of this as well. But then you know what ZBrush in Blender, for example, looks like. Now, ZBrush is a software professionally for sculpting, but Blender can do it as well. Just a bit different. But as a beginner, I would say start off with your basic modeling, maybe from reference images, and have some animations and rigging going on there. Now, maybe you are in Blender for game assets and game creation. Let me show you how to turn a model from Blender into a game engine. In my example, I will use Unreal Engine, but you can do this for Unity as well. Grab any of the models that we created, or just create any new model that you would like, and let's practice this. So, first of all, I'll make sure this is one object, give it a fitting name. F2, I named the shield, and have the shield selected. Nothing else. Go to File, Export, and then export as FBX. This is a very good format for games and, for example, Unity or Unreal Engine. So select this one. Limit to selected objects. In this case, I only want the mesh and the other. I don't need the armature. Now, if you have your fish selected, for example, you want the armature as well, because those are the bones. I don't need the lamp, I don't need the camera or the other empty objects. Then we will go to geometry and set it to face. Now, I don't have animations for this shield, so I deselect them. Now, if you, for example, took your fish or any other, you can just bake this as well. Save to the place you want and then click Export FBX. This file is now on your computer. Let's go to your game engine and you can just drag this in, for example. Okay. You can, for example, import to game, find your FBX, open the FBX, import it. Then let it compile a bit. It's compiling the shaders and the colors that you're using. Just let it do its thing for a while. And then you see the material colors that you used in Blender and the mesh itself. And then you can drag it up. And then you can still have some fun with it here in Blender as well. And now when you play, you have your shield inside of a game engine. So that's pretty cool. So you can create any model and put them into your game engine right now. Now you got a little taste of Blender. I hope you liked the tutorial, but before you go, there are some more important things I want to show you. First of all, we went over the very basics of the navigation, of the options of Blender, and I showed you quite a lot. Now, this is a lot to take in at first, but how do you advance from here? I have some suggestions for you. First of all, go to blender.org, support tutorials. These tutorials are great for starters and some fundamentals that you can practice with. They're all free to follow along. Then another famous one is the Blender Donut tutorial. This is made by Blender Guru. Now, this tutorial is completed and he is remaking it as we speak right now. And you create a donut and you go really more into that, into the things that we just learned before. Then another great channel is Grant Abbott, and look for his low poly, because his low poly work is very cool also, and by copying what he does, you learn a lot about Blender as well. Another cool channel is Inventia, and in his playlist he has a very cool Blender 10-minute modeling challenges. You can do as he does and just follow along. He also shows you how to do this in Unity and combines it with Blender as well. And for some shameless self-promotion, I would suggest you subscribe to my YouTube channel or find it on YouTube. Now you look up for some Blender, and there are many Blender tutorials on my YouTube channel, and I will create more in the future. I go more into that, how to create reference images, my progress, combining it with Unreal Engine, and some pretty neat tips and tricks, developing characters, for example, and some pretty nifty stuff right there. More in the future, so I would say, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share with anyone who wants to follow along. And then I would say have some fun and set some daily goals for you or weekly goals so you can have some fun and model pretty cool stuff in Blender. Have a nice day and see you around.